Enterprises struggle to detect advanced attacks quickly and thoroughly as evolving threats continue to evade current security tools. Skillful threat detection starts with diverse, high-value security telemetry to run detections on. The Chronicle platform allows security teams to store and analyze petabytes of data in one place so that you can quickly apply powerful detection rules against all of your security data. Learn more about the Chronicle platform and the latest threat detection capabilities at securityweekly.com/chronicle. Can we continue to function without facts? Cybercriminals exploit the absence of facts, harming organizations through the easiest point of entry: email. No company should claim they can stop all phishing attacks. It's about having all the facts in seconds and reducing the time it takes to respond. It's minutes versus hours and the difference between a security incident and a breach. Greathorn. See through the dark. To learn more, go to securityweekly.com/Greathorn. Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Join Amit Barakat, co-founder and CEO of Perimeter 81, and myself for a technical deep dive into the problems inherent in legacy VPN technology. We will explore solutions for the modern workforce and how momentum towards a perimeterless architecture is helping redefine the future of cybersecurity. You can visit securityweekly.com/perimeter81 for more information and to register. This segment is sponsored by Secure Circle. To learn more about Secure Circle, please visit securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. Joining us today from Secure Circle is co-founder and CEO Jeff Capone. Jeff is an award-winning executive leader with expertise in cybersecurity, enterprise software development, network and storage solutions, and IoT applications. Jeff has a track record of founding and selling successful software companies. Jeff, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here, where we're going to talk about data security and how it intersects with conditional access and SaaS applications, which is actually a question of how you do that, right? Because the data sometimes lives and is originated in the cloud. I created it in the cloud. How do we protect it when it's in SaaS applications?
Well, when it's in the SaaS service, it's generally secure, right? You rely on your SaaS provider to keep that secure. It's the shared trust model, right? So the shared security model where you're relying on your SaaS or cloud provider to keep your data safe while it's in their possession. And it really becomes your responsibility once it leaves that service. But one of the things that is really important, again, for zero trust is no trust. And what no trust really means is absolute control, which means you need to be able to change your access control at any given point in time. Just because a user is allowed access today might not mean they're allowed access tomorrow. So when you think about conditional access, we typically think about that when getting access to a cloud service or SaaS offering. But the truth is it should be for any data. And that should be when the data leaves these services that you were protecting with conditional access. How do you maintain conditional access once it goes and leaves those cloud services? So how do you have that persistent control that's dynamic and can take in the telemetry from other sources to decide whether or not this user or the device has become risky at any given point in time? So again, that's about maintaining control over the data, but being able to adapt based upon telemetry.
Right. Matt.
Yeah. So Jeff, I think the classic use case, sales rep has access to Salesforce, right? SaaS-based application, current employee. Then he starts downloading customer lists. Then like a week later, he puts in his resignation. I mean, that's like the classic use case. I think what you're talking about, how do you not only control access to the app, but also the data he potentially downloaded before he left the organization, right? I mean, that's a typical scenario.
Sure. So you have to go back into the past. So it's about maintaining control it's about allowing access without giving up control and being able to change that control at any given point in time. So what we do at Secure Circle is make sure that when the transition happens from trusting the SaaS provider to now becoming the custodian of your own data, we allow you to give you that control over that data. Other ways you could think about how you'd want to maintain control, allow access without giving up control. Because once you give up control, conditional access is no longer possible. So it's about never giving up control and being able to dynamically changing access. And one of the things that is just being able to do that. So we consume the telemetry from other sources and can make those decisions, but it just really emphasizes the ability for the security products and the whole ecosystem as a whole to really work together, right? So it's all that. Is the device risky now, right? I know CrowdStrike has a new service where you can start rating the device. They're looking at several vendors to go and subscribe to these feeds so that they can start taking action based upon what the telemetry looks like. So these are really interesting things for the other vendors in the space to really subscribe to this data and really enhance their product offering based upon new telemetry, new sources of data they can see and have the ability to dynamically react. So the Salesforce example, as long as you're having persistent control and not giving up control, then you can always revoke access. You can sort of go back in time and restrict access as long as you haven't given up control.
Now, does that require you to have an integration into the identity access players? Because when I hear conditional access, I think identity and access management players here. Is that where Secure Circle integrates with the identity and access management players for that conditional access, but then also still owns aspects of control of the data, at least at the endpoint layer? How do those ties come together?
Sure. So we would enable you to have conditional access control over your data. You still need to have an authentication mechanism to say, this is the rule, this is the policy at this point in time. And then we would enact that policy. But we would work in conjunction with your identity provider to make that decision, or your threat feeds as well, to make that decision. Is the device even risky at this point in time? And so we can take action at the device level where your identity provider could take action at the user level and change controls based upon the riskiness or the sort of analysis of the user behavior.
So, Jeff, would you integrate with Salesforce or the identity provider being used to access Salesforce to say, if a sales representative were to download client data, that in order to get that data out, they have to use Secure Circle to and have an identity in there and be allowed in Secure Circle to access that? If I don't have Secure Circle, then I can't get the data out, correct?
Correct. That's how you would set up your posture of your device. So we become part of that compliance posture of the device. So, and then your identity service would check either through MDM or through an assertion with us that your device is compliant before the token would be issued to get access to that SaaS offering. And then your data would egress out of that, or eventually inevitably egress out of that SaaS offering. And then we would enable you to have control over that data. But then whether or not the user is a threat, that's something we wouldn't decide, but we would enable. So that information of whether the device is compromised, whether the user is compromised, would have to come from some sort of behavior analytics, which would be fed to us, and then we can take action accordingly.
I gotcha. Yeah, so you could basically, you're saying that upon login, you could enforce, hey, you can't log in unless you've been validated by Secure Circle, saying that I've got Secure Circle on my device, therefore I can log in and access his data.
Sure, and one of the things that might happen too is if the user is looking more risky, they could notify us, and then you could change the posture of what the user is allowed to access. So let's just say, for example, you had all sorts of types of different data on your device, anything from highly confidential, top secret, to just employee data. You could decide based upon that risk score what type of access you want to give at that point in time, even to the data that has left that cloud offering, right? So we spend a lot of time thinking about observing the user and their behavior before giving them that token to access the SaaS service or the cloud service. but using that same concept to access the data that they've already quote unquote possess, right? So they never really own anything in a zero trust model. You're always maintaining control over what they perceive to have access to.
Right. And a risky device could be a new device. It could be an unpatched device. It could be a device that just had some kind of indicators of compromise.
Different geography, right? I mean, there's lots of really interesting things, right? I mean, if a device showed up today in New York and an hour later in California, how is that possible, right? So that would be some interesting information. So again, devices can be virtualized, MAC addresses can be spoofed, all this great stuff, and we can look and maybe now it's something that's just not possible. So clearly, you want to restrict access to that device because it's probably not a legitimate device in that particular case. Same thing with the user. I mean, sure, users can travel the country in minutes, right, just by changing their network path. But in general, is that a risky behavior, and is that something we should revoke at the user level as well, right? So you're really taking that analysis and feeding into systems that enable dynamic control or dynamic access, I should say, is really where we see us playing in that whole analytics space, right? Us providing the ability to take that data and not just use that data to decide how to control, so to speak, the bleeding moving forward, but also go and use that data to actually look back in time almost and start restricting access on data that essentially was egressed from these services in the past.
Yeah. What I love about this and where it fits into my triad, right? You've got the SaaS-based application, you've got the identity and access management platforms, and now you have the data component tightly integrated together really to control what's going on across those three environments, right? Do I give you access or don't I? Do I allow you to have access to the data or don't I? It really brings that triad that I talk about is, app user data and actually making it very real and actionable for the organization, for anybody.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, you really have two choices. Well, really maybe three. If you really want to complete that triad, it's force users to live their world in a browser, right? Like literally nothing comes out of the browser. Everything's in the browser. The data is always in the data center, and every app they use has to be in a browser. For some companies, that is realistic, and they can then have absolute control over their data because nothing leaves the data center. The data would never leave the data center. The other option would be I think we've talked about this on one of the other shows, VDI, right? Like literally force the users to have their machine in the data center, right? So really that's just one layer deeper than just a browser. So now you can use any application, but the applications are running in the data center, not on the endpoint. But in this virtual endpoint running inside the data center. And then the other option would be to make sure that you have control over the data. That's what we do at Secure Circle. So if you have control of the data, you're getting the benefits of securing the data as if you had VDI, and the benefit of securing the data as if you forced all users to work through a web browser, but also the ability to use whatever apps they want, still maintain that same level of security over the data, and provide conditional access on that data as well. And again, if you force users into a web browser or VDI, you can have that same level of control. But if those aren't two mechanisms you want to go and force your users down, then Secure Circle is a great option.
Yeah, I want to pick on the browser for a moment because I think there's two major issues I have with as much trust as we put in the browser, or many of us put in the browser. One, the architecture leads to vulnerabilities. There's so much going on in the browser. If you lift up the hood on modern browsers,
it's an operating system. I mean, Firefox, you can copy out all your keys out of one browser and put it in another, and pick up your banking session on another device.
Yeah, it's atrocious. Also, brought up this week too that I thought really made me think about browser security is the visibility we have into the browser and what it's doing is typically pretty weak, which to me was shocking because we do trust the browser for access to all of these SaaS applications as the mechanism to do that. Yet our visibility in most enterprises today is really probably not great. I don't think there's many that would stand up and say, I've got complete visibility to what happens on everyone's browser all the time.
Right. So to that point, you have a few options there as well. Obviously, you could do something like Casper or Swig and get more analytics into that as well. But one of the things we've done just for telemetry purposes, we do enforce a plugin, a Chromium-based plugin that does give telemetry. It's optional, but it does give us that extra telemetry to what's going on in the browser to decide what to do with the data as well. So you hit on a good point there. So yeah, the browser is really is a risky place, right? It's become its own operating system, has its own internal file system, right? Has its own internal security mechanisms, doing it's typically doing its own SSL of some sort, right? That's all
there's process separation, there's the rendering engine, the browser engine, the window engine, right? There's a lot of really cool stuff, but I'm like, ooh, security-wise, yeah, it's been abused.
Right. So I definitely agree that the browser is a risk. But again, if you put the clamps on and you force people in the browser and hopefully you limit what they could do within that app itself, the cloud-based app, then hopefully you're trying to minimize some of those risks. But again, it's all about the data, right? I mean, everything we do in the security world is a proxy to protect the data. And ultimately, if you have absolute control over your data, then you start to think of the world a lot differently.
It's interesting, Jeff, you're reminding me, we were talking about hacker movies last week on Paul's Security Weekly. And there's a great line in the movie Sneakers where Ben Kingsley states that it's all about the information. Everything we see, we do, we hear, it's all about the information. And that really could be a great tagline for Secure Circle, right? Because it's really what we're talking about is we don't trust all these other things, but we have to protect the integrity and security of the data.
That's right, and it really does come down to that, right? And back to Paul's triad. I mean, that's why we believe that this is the missing piece, right?
Wait, that's Matt's triad.
Sorry, Matt's triad.
I have enchanted quadrants.
Paul's
Matt has, right.
My
Did I call it? It's Matt's triad. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. But yeah, no. So yeah, it really does fill that missing piece there, and without thinking from a data perspective, where does that leave you? It always is going to leave you with a blind spot, right? And that's where we feel that we come in and really fill in that blind spot. And again, making sure that the control is never given up and the access can be dynamic, right? So that's the key. So really, the endpoint should just be considered holistically as part of your overall data protection strategy, or your data security strategy, and that spans the cloud and onto the endpoints. It really should just be one comprehensive approach, right? Like why take a different strategy in the cloud to identify sensitive information and then a different approach on the endpoint, when if it is truly all about the data, you can just take one comprehensive approach to do that.
And I was just going to ask if we get indicators of compromise, like do you feed into other systems? Because when I look at something like a phishing attack, I'm concerned about that. But the real concern, if we make it about the data, which it is I want to know if someone tried to access data and if they got it out.
That's right.
Right? Secure Circle can tell me and provide telemetry on that. Right.
So, yeah, we subscribe to other people's telemetry, but that's an interesting point too. Yes. So we also have our own telemetry that we should use to instrument conditional access as well. But yeah, so we would, for example, if there were non-trusted processes trying to read data, they would be unsuccessful, but we would know that those access attempts did happen. And that can give you another vector into whether or not the endpoint is compromised, right? So, but again, if the data is tightly controlled, then other than maybe some performance slowdown, there's not much that threat can do.
I sleep a little better at night knowing that. I sleep a little better at night knowing that if there is a phishing attack, that my data, there's a lot larger hurdles for the attackers to go over, right?
Agreed. Yeah, but yeah, so there is definitely other vectors that we do log, or other data that we do log that could be used to identify various threats and take conditional access controls accordingly.
Yep. Matt.
Jeff, I was going to ask you if we've done ourselves a disservice in the industry. Back in the early days, I've been in this space since 1996. We used to call it information security or information protection. Now we refer to the space as cybersecurity. Did we kind of lose our way to really go back to our point, right? It's all about the information. It's all about the data. Did we do ourselves a disservice by going after the cybersecurity? We got to protect cyberspace and really not focus on what was really core to what we all thought the space was originally, which was information security or protection.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but that doesn't negate all the other stuff that happens. Just because, think about it, just because even if we have absolute control of the data, how do I know I trust you? What are you doing? How do I know you are you, right? I mean, so there's whole other concerns that you need to address. So I'm not saying we solve everything, right? There's, how do I know Jeff is Jeff, right? I mean, there has to be ways to get more comfortable with that, right? And know a score associated with an individual user, a device, back to what we mentioned earlier. So there's lots of things that still need to happen outside of just securing the data, because the data could be secured, but at some point you're giving access, and that could be through a vulnerability. It could be through a phishing scheme. It could be lots of ways, right? And those absolutely have to still be addressed. So I think calling it cybersecurity is absolutely correct, because it's gone beyond the information. I mean, just trying to social engineer somebody to give you their bank account information, right? That's something that access control, perfect access control, could never protect you against, right? And then there's also the notion of information assurance, right? How do I know this information is valid, right? I mean, I give you the routing information to pay a bill. How do you know it was me? How do you know the routing information was correct? Or maybe it was me. How do we know that information wasn't hijacked? Again, it's not sensitive information, but how do you validate the trustworthiness? How do you assure that information is valid, right? So there's a whole host of things that go on beyond just securing data that the cybersecurity industry is addressing.
Yeah, and
I still think it's app user data, but
but I think you're right. It is.
Think about it, right? I mean, sure. I mean, but how do you just think of information assurance, right? So that's different than information security. This happens all the time. In fact, I mean, we talk to companies that do escrows for homes, right? And one of the questions that come up to us is, yeah, sure, you can secure the information that we have, but as long as it's secure, it's great with Secure Circle. But what happens if before it was secured with Secure Circle, somebody got in there and changed the routing numbers that they're going to send to one of their clients that's purchasing a home, and they inadvertently wire their earnest money to a erroneous bank account, right? So just securing the data, if it wasn't assured as being the proper information, is still a big problem, right? And that still needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think the terminology is interesting, because I think information technology is where information security was born, but I still don't think that covers everything that we need to be concerned with in today's security world, because cybersecurity doesn't cover it either.
I agree, right? No, absolutely doesn't, right? There's lots of things that go outside. I mean, everything from social engineering ways to get information. How do you secure that? I mean, you still need to train people, right? I mean, the people are still part of the process. As much as we try to eliminate them, they're still part of the process. So that's definitely still a very important part of the overall programs that people need to adopt.
Absolutely. Jeff, are there things at Secure Circle you want to tell our audience about, new product developments, announcements, anything of that nature?
I did allude to we now have a Chromium plugin that gives us telemetry to help enforce activity that's happening through a browser, make decisions on how to secure data that is coming through these SaaS services. So that's one thing that we've recently released, which is another way to minimize the surface area of attack and us to help make decisions on what data to protect. I think since last we talked, that's probably one of the newer achievements that we've delivered to our customers.
Outstanding. Folks that want to learn more and request a demo can go to securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. Jeff, thank you very much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much, and have a good rest of your day.
You too. Alexi from CrowdStrike's coming up next. Stay tuned.